7 signs demonic ambassadors are secretly following you. There's a reason some people feel watched even in an empty room. There's a reason you sometimes hear whispers in your mind that don't sound like your own thoughts, or you wake up in the middle of the night with a sense of being observed. And many dismiss these moments as paranoia or imagination, but for those of us who have walked the path of awakening, we know better. Demonic ambassadors, entities whose task is not always to destroy you outright, but to monitor, distract, weaken, and influence, move through the shadows of your life with calculated precision. They are not demons in the full form you might imagine from folklore. They are messengers, scouts, energetic infiltrators, and their presence in your life is never random. They follow those who carry unusual potential, those who radiate a vibration that can disrupt the balance of shadow and light. If you've ever felt like your spiritual journey attracts strange resistance, or that unseen forces surround you, then you need to hear this. The first sign demonic ambassadors are following you is the feeling of unexplained heaviness whenever you are about to do something aligned with your higher path. You could be ready to meditate, pray, write, create, or step into an act of courage, and suddenly you feel drained, sleepy, or restless. It's as if the energy to move forward is stolen at the exact moment it's needed most. This is not coincidence. Ambassadors track your progress and send interference to stall it. Why? Because every moment you step closer to clarity, you step further from manipulation. Their presence is revealed not by physical chains, but by subtle interruptions in flow. When you recognize this, the key is to not confuse the heaviness with laziness or lack of worth. Instead, you must anchor deeper into discipline, because discipline cuts through interference like a sword through fog.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
The second sign is the strange repetition of negative patterns that seem almost orchestrated. But do you ever notice how certain temptations, distractions, or toxic people appear in cycles, almost like clockwork, just when you're about to elevate? This is not random either. Ambassadors are pattern weavers. They bring the same type of test back again and again, hoping this time you'll break. They whisper into the atmosphere of your life to remind you of your old chains, because they know the past is often easier to grab than the future is to build. Every time you see the cycle repeating, ask yourself, is this my weakness re-emerging, or is it their attempt to recycle my wounds? If it's the latter, then your task is not to run, but to respond differently than you ever have before. That one shift breaks their cycle of influence. The third sign is spiritual static. Have you ever tried to pray, meditate, or simply find stillness, only to be interrupted by racing thoughts, sudden distractions, or even technological interference, devices glitching, lights flickering, unexplained noises? Ambassadors are masters of interference. They don't have to stop you outright. They just need to interrupt your focus long enough for you to lose connection with yourself. Spiritual static feels like a fog that makes clarity seem out of reach. The wisdom here is to understand that static is not a wall but a signal. When interference rises, it means your practice was about to pierce through deeper than usual. That's why it escalates in those moments. Instead of quitting, lean in harder, because on the other side of that static is often a breakthrough you were meant to have. The fourth sign is a shift in the atmosphere around you. Sensitive people feel it immediately. The room grows cold, shadows seem thicker, the energy of a space feels heavy without reason. Sometimes it's even a faint smell of decay, sulfur, or something off that you cannot explain. Ambassadors carry signatures. They leave traces in the environment because they cannot fully mask their vibration when they move close. If you've ever walked into your room and suddenly felt unwelcome in your own space, that's not imagination. That's their proximity. What do? Do not fear. Fear is what cements their presence. Instead, command sovereignty over your space. Then speak aloud with authority. This space answers to my vibration, not yours. You'd be shocked how quickly the atmosphere shifts when you reclaim ownership of the unseen just as firmly as you own the seen. The fifth sign is invasive dreams. Ambassadors thrive on entering the subconscious because while your conscious guard sleeps, your inner world is open. These dreams aren't random nonsense, they are vivid, repetitive, often emotionally charged. They may involve being chased, trapped, manipulated, or seduced. Sometimes you even wake up exhausted, like you fought a war in your sleep. That's because, in a way, you did. The spiritual realm is not confined to daylight hours. If you're being followed, you'll notice the dreams aren't random but thematic. They target your weak points: fear of failure, loneliness, rejection, shame. What you must understand is this: when you wake from such dreams, don't dismiss them. Record them, reflect on them, decode them. They're not just nightmares, they're reports of where you're being attacked and where you need to fortify yourself. The sixth sign is the sudden influence of people who feel like puppets. Have you ever noticed how sometimes others act out of character around you, provoking conflict, draining your energy, trying to pull you into arguments or self-doubt? Often ambassadors don't move directly, they work through others, amplifying their shadows to reach you. A friend suddenly turns cold, a coworker picks a fight, a stranger projects hostility without reason. If this becomes a pattern, recognize that the real target isn't the person but you. Their energy is being used as a vector. Your task is not to hate them but to see past the puppet into the energy moving the strings. Responding with calm, with boundaries, with awareness, starves the ambassador of the drama they crave. The seventh and most subtle sign is the voice of doubt that arrives disguised as your own. Ambassadors don't always want to scare you, often they want to convince you. They mimic your inner voice, whispering thoughts like you're not ready, you'll never make it, why bother? The cruelty here is that they hide their voice in yours, so you start to believe it's you betraying yourself. This is why discernment is vital. Ask yourself, does this thought weaken me or strengthen me? Does it lead me toward alignment or away? Your authentic inner voice might be firm, but it never dismantles your worth. Anything that does is not yours. If you've seen yourself in these signs, don't panic. The very fact that ambassadors follow you means you are carrying a vibration worth monitoring. You are dangerous to the shadows because your awakening is contagious. The presence of interference is proof of your power, not evidence of your weakness. The key is to respond with awareness, discipline, and sovereignty rather than fear. And now, having revealed these 7 signs, we need to go deeper. In the next part, we will explore how these ambassadors choose their targets, why they follow some more intensely than others, and how you can turn their presence into fuel for your growth. Why being followed by demonic ambassadors means you're marked for greatness. Most people see the presence of demonic ambassadors as a curse, as if being followed means you're broken, weak, or unlucky. But here's the truth that only those who endure the path eventually realize: they don't follow what's empty, they follow what's overflowing. A thief doesn't break into an abandoned house, they break into the one that's filled with treasure. In the same way, demonic ambassadors don't waste their time on souls that pose no threat. They shadow the ones who carry a frequency capable of shaking foundations, the ones marked by destiny, the ones who can shift not just their own lives, but ripple through generations. If you felt their presence, if you've noticed the signs, it means you've been identified as someone who matters. The darkness doesn't monitor the irrelevant. It studies the dangerous. Think about your life. Haven't you noticed how resistance often increases when you step closer to purpose? The more you grow, the more attacks intensify. That's not punishment, it's validation. It is the universe's way of telling you that you're leaving behind the level where shadows could easily control you. And now they have to send ambassadors just to slow you down. This is how chosen ones are revealed. The greater the pursuit against you, the greater the potential inside you. Ask yourself this: why would unseen forces invest so much energy into pulling you off track if you weren't carrying something powerful? The answer is simple: they wouldn't. You are followed because you are dangerous to them. The reason you're marked for greatness is not just about potential, it's about energy. Your vibration is different. Maybe you've noticed how people confide in you without knowing why, or how you walk into a room and the atmosphere changes. Maybe you've endured pain that would have destroyed others, and instead of collapsing, you transmuted it into wisdom. These are signals of someone who carries a high-voltage spirit. And high voltage always attracts attention, both from the light that wants to expand it and the shadow that wants to suppress it. Ambassadors sense this electricity in you, and their mission is to keep you doubting, distracted, or drained so you never discover the full scale of your power. But here's where the paradox unfolds. Their very presence teaches you mastery. Imagine you were never followed, never attacked. You drift through life half asleep, mistaking comfort for progress. But because you are pursued, you are forced to sharpen your awareness, to fortify your spirit, to learn the deeper layers of discernment. Every interference becomes training. Every attack becomes resistance that strengthens your spiritual muscle. Over time, you realize the ambassadors were not just obstacles, they were unwilling teachers. They make you grow in ways you never would have chosen on your own. That's why being followed is not a curse, it's confirmation. It's the universe saying, you are too significant to be left untested. Now let's go even deeper. Why you, specifically? Why not the billions who pass through life without ever feeling that pressure? Because some souls carry contracts that stretch beyond this lifetime. Some of us agreed, long before we entered this world, to be catalysts, to awaken, to protect, to disrupt cycles of bondage. If you're one of them, your journey was never going to be easy. You were never going to live unnoticed. The demonic ambassadors mark you because you already marked yourself when you chose this path. The night resistance is a reminder of the promise your soul made to the cosmos. And every time you endure, you fulfill that promise. So here's the practical wisdom. Stop seeing the signs as random oppression. Start using them as signals. When you feel drained, instead of collapsing, ask, what breakthrough was I about to have that triggered this interference? When patterns repeat, instead of despairing, ask, what lesson have I still not integrated that they keep trying to exploit? When the atmosphere shifts, don't freeze in fear. Declare your sovereignty and anchor yourself. You will begin to notice that the very presence of ambassadors becomes an indicator of your next elevation. Their shadow becomes your compass. Now I want to challenge you with a deep question. What if you stop running from the fact that you're followed and instead embraced it as evidence that you're chosen? How differently would you walk through the world if you truly believed that the presence of these forces is proof that you are marked for greatness? That shift in perspective alone could transform your nights of fear into nights of empowerment. And here's the most astonishing part. When you finally stop fearing them, their power collapses. Ambassadors thrive only where they are respected as threats. When you see them for what they are, scouts who can't touch the core of your being, unless you allow it, you strip away their mystique. You reclaim your throne. That is the moment you stop being hunted and start becoming the hunter of your own shadows. In the next part, we will dive into the strategies ambassadors use to infiltrate your life, the psychological tactics, emotional triggers, and energetic loopholes they exploit, and more importantly, how to seal every single one of those cracks. The secret tactics of demonic ambassadors and how to outsmart them every time. Demonic ambassadors are not chaotic thugs, they are strategic operatives. They use subtle psychology, energetic loopholes, and social engineering to infiltrate your life. The first tactic is mimicry. They become familiar because familiarity lowers defenses. They wear the clothes of your past comforts, old patterns, nostalgic justifications, or flattering voices that sound exactly like your own inner monologue. The trick is to confuse you into thinking you're choosing, when in fact you are being guided back into the same trap. The way to outsmart mimicry is to require deliberate novelty. Whenever a choice feels eerily comfortable, impose a small friction test, pause for 5 breaths, change the environment, ask one outsider for a disinterested opinion, or journal the exact costs. If it's real growth, it will pass the friction test. If it's mimicry, it will dissolve. The second tactic is divided attention. Ambassadors scatter your focus so you cannot complete deep work on your soul. They flirt with busyness, usher in petty emergencies, and create noisy obligations timed precisely when you're ready to take a leap. The remedy is sacred scheduling. Guard at least one daily 90-minute block where you are unreachable. No phone, no email, no compromise. Call it prayer, art, strategy, or reading, name it, whatever helps you keep it. Protect it like you would protect your child. Consistent deep blocks collapse the ambassador's ability to swamp you with tiny fires. Sustained attention reforms your field into a fortress. Third, they exploit intimacy as leverage. They use people, friends, lovers, mentors who carry shadows to destabilize you. The tactic looks loving on the surface but leaves residue that anchors their access: guilt, obligation, reciprocal debt. Outsmarting this requires relational hygiene. Learn to audit attachments, ask who benefits from the dynamic, what you give versus receive, and whether the relationship expands your sovereignty or drains it. When you find parasitic loops, introduce boundaries, time limits, financial clarity, role definitions. Boundaries are not punishments, they are disinfectant. Fourth, they weaponize doubt by mimicking accountability. They will whisper that you must be more humble, more cautious, more small, masquerading critique as wisdom. This tactic paralyzes action through moral overreach. The antidote is calibrated accountability. Choose 2 honest elders or equals who hold growth and integrity simultaneously, not just critique. Test counsel against your core values. If advice forces you away from your purpose under the guise of virtue, reject it. Real accountability enhances mission. False accountability erases it. Fifth, ambassadors engineer consent through repetition. Small concessions become a pattern, and patterns become permissions. They don't need a grand betrayal when they can win 50 tiny betrayals of self. Outsmart repetition by instituting monthly integrity audits. At the end of every month, review one habit you allowed to slide and reclaim a concrete corrective act. 3 days of discipline, a confession to a witness, a restored routine. Repeat this repair ritual and the tiny erosions can never accumulate into collapse. 6th, they manipulate rhythm. They know your body clock vulnerabilities and time attacks. Accordingly, late night storms of thought, Sunday afternoons of low willpower, early morning fatigue. Outsmart rhythm warfare by becoming the manager of your circadian temple. Prioritize sleep hygiene. Anchor your mornings with the same 3 acts: hydrate, breath, light, and avoid decision-making during known low-energy windows. If you must act, use micro-decisions with pre-committed rules so you cannot be redirected by temporary weakness. Finally, they create narratives in the language of identity. You are not enough. This is impossible for someone like you. You must compromise to survive. These stories are the most insidious because they feel autobiographical. Outsmart them by becoming the author of your story every morning. Write one sentence about who you are becoming and speak it aloud. Record a short voice memo of one victory each week. The accumulation of tiny authored truths rewrites the neural script that ambassadors try to hijack. Now a question for you: which of these tactics have you been surrendering to unconsciously? Name it, because naming is the first weapon of resistance. The second is simple action: 1 ritual, 1 boundary, 1 audit this week. Do that, and you'll notice how quickly the ambassador's influence thins. You don't need to fight specters in mythic battle. You need to be disciplined, deliberate, and sovereign. When you train those muscles, their tactics become obvious and, more importantly, powerless. How to turn their shadow into your power: practical protocols, rituals, and sovereignty that stop demonic ambassadors in their tracks. We've seen the signs, understood that being followed is often a mark of significance, and learned the tactics those ambassadors use to try to derail us. Now comes the most important part: what do we do with that knowledge? How do we convert being followed into an advantage? How do we reclaim our daily experience? And how do we build a life where interference either bounces off or becomes fuel for the next elevation? This final part is a field guide, not vague spiritual platitudes, but precise, scalable practices and frameworks you can enact tonight, tomorrow, and every week after, so these ambassadors lose interest, influence, and access. First, sovereignty begins with architecture. Your environment and routines are the primary battlefield. Demonic ambassadors exploit weak thresholds, random schedules, chaotic sleeping spaces, unfenced emotional time. Build a fortress. Start with sleep hygiene as non-negotiable, dark room, low AMF from devices, a 10-minute wind-down ritual, breath, a short invocation, a boundary statement. Your bedroom must become a sanctuary with a procedure that signals to every layer of your system that the night is not available for interference. The ritual needs not be elaborate. Speak one sentence of sovereignty aloud: this night returns only what is mine. Nothing that seeks to take remains here. Repeat it for 21 nights to stabilize the circuit. Ritualize your waking too: light exposure, a 3-breath grounding, and a single-line intention that anchors your field. Second, energy hygiene is daily maintenance. No one leaks power by accident. Energy drains are habitual. Audit your week and identify the top 3 habitual siphons: people who always call when you're tired, social media doomscroll, second jobs that create resentment. Remove 1 siphon per week. Replace it with an energy positive 15 minutes of breathwork, 10 minutes of movement or a grounding walk in nature. Small replacements compound into structural change. Additionally, learn the microskill of chord awareness. Notice where you physically feel drain, throat tension, heavy limbs, foggy head, and practice a 5-count withdrawal. Visualize pulling your energy back into your center and sealing it for a minute. Do this whenever you sense a leak. Third, information and mental sovereignty. Ambassadors hijack narratives. You must reclaim authorship. Start a 3-pronged cognitive system: morning scripting, midday check-in, evening debrief. Morning scripting: write 1 sentence describing who you are becoming and 1 concrete action you will take that day that aligns with that sentence. Midday check-in: pause for 60 seconds and ask, am I operating from my chosen story? The evening debrief: record 1 victory and 1 learning. This triad rewrites subconscious narratives and reduces the likelihood that hostile voices will reauthor your day while you're distracted. Fourth, relational defenses. Ambassadors work through people. They establish relational hygiene protocols, a 60-second energy audit. Before entering difficult conversations, ask, will this conversation expand or contract my field? And a boundary script for recurring drains: I can't take calls after 8 p.m. Let's schedule X. Don't confuse compassion with permeability. Choosing who you are close to is not cruelty, it's stewardship. If someone repeatedly undermines you, create a cooling-off boundary and limit the interaction length. You are not required to rescue everyone from their own shadow. And fifth, tactical practice for spiritual static and dream incursions. For static, adopt a 4-step focus recovery. 1. Label the interference, static. 2. Breathe 4 slow counts. 3. Reposition attention to a single anchor, breath, mantra, or tactile point. 4. Finish by grounding, pressing feet to floor, touching a hard surface. For dream incursions, create a press-sleep sealing ritual. Write down 1 intention for safe dreaming. Visualize a protective geometry, a circle, a lattice, a light field. Then say the phrase, all lessons are mine, nothing else is allowed. If dreams continue, keep a dream log and work the images in daylight with a trusted counselor or spiritual friend. Decoding often dissolves the influence. 6th, build a covenant network. Powerful souls who stand alone burn out or become targets. Create a small circle of 3 people who are sovereign peers, 1 equal who reflects strategy, 1 elder who offers perspective, and 1 younger or different view who keeps you honest. Monthly share 1 success, 1 failing, and a restorative plan. This network acts like a quarantine system. When something questionable appears in your field, you have external calibration to test reality against. Ambassadors hate witnesses. Community is a natural disinfectant. 7th, administrative and literal protections. Use practical tools. Reduce unnecessary exposure to chaotic media. Clean up your digital environment. Unsubscribe, mute, limit, and practice financial boundaries. Debt is a vector of chronic stress which invites interference. If you feel under targeted harassment that crosses into stalking or real-world threats, seek legal protection and local authorities. Spiritual sovereignty does not replace civic responsibility. The anchoring spirit and following practical safety protocols are complementary. Finally, remind yourself daily of this essential reframing. Being followed is confirmation of your value, not condemnation. Use that energy as fuel, not fear. Begin tonight. Perform a 5-minute sealing ritual. Write tomorrow's single-line identity sentence and remove 1 small energy leak. These micro-actions compound into a lifestyle in which demonic ambassadors find less purchase and more consequence. But their job is to distract you. Your job is to live so intentionally that distraction becomes impossible. Now I'll close with the deepest question I can put to you. If you truly believed that the interference marks you as a being of consequence, would you respond with fear or with disciplined devotion to becoming unstoppable? The answer determines everything.